we present the news quiz with your host, Miles Jupp.
And welcome to the news quiz. We start with a cutting from The Guardian, read by Diana Speed.
The leader of a Christian group who claimed that the world would end on Wednesday has admitted that his prediction was incorrect. Chris McCann had warned that the planet would be destroyed with fire on the 7th of October. This did not happen.
Our thanks to Ryan Hockley for sending in that nonsense. Now, let's meet the teams. Will you welcome first on my right, Jeremy Hardy and senior editor at The Economist, Anne McElvoy. And opposite them on my left, Sara Pascoe and Bob Mills. Jeremy, who thinks that consistency is surplus to requirements?
This will be John McDonnell trying to negotiate the guile and gamesmanship of the aristocracy in a bit of a haphazard fashion, because George Osborne came up with a ruse, which is this fiscal charter, which would tie the hands of the Chancellor, something he might or might not enjoy, we're not sure. But what it would mean would be that any Chancellor is forced to run a surplus in normal times. Some economists say that's rubbish. Most people say it's irrelevant and meaningless because it can be repealed or ignored, as indeed Osborne has ignored most of all of his targets, in fact, and kind of complete U-turn on deficit reduction and implemented the Einstein plan. Anyway, point being that he set up a trap for Labour and there was no way round it, really. Either you're a deficit denier or you're austerity light. And so Osborne sort of tried to play it one way, beat him in his own game, and call his bluff and then change his mind rather too late. But what really Osborne was trying to do is divide Labour and also win over those Labour MPs who are rather closer to Osborne than they are to the aims and values of the Labour Party. You see, they don't want Labour to go away, but they want Labour to be there to mind the store for when they need a break. Kind of Labour to be supply Tories for when the actual Tories, are poorly or have a nervous breakdown. So that's basically what the role of the Labour Party would be in an ideal world run by Osborne and Chukaramana, you see.
I think it's much better for politicians to change their mind based on new information that's made them think maybe they were wrong the first time than to just go, well, I've already said it, like a quiz, I've got to take your first answer. Guys.
I think it's fair enough to say that new Labour leadership had not predicted victory. I think there's a lack of preparation. There clearly wasn't a plan B. There was no contingency plan for the eventuality of Corbyn actually winning. But they're finding their way slowly, I suppose.
Call me the woman from The Economist, but not knowing within 2 weeks whether you actually want to run a budget surplus or you don't. It is a bit like turning up to the driving test without knowing where the indicator is, right? You can go one way or the other, but you can't really not know, especially as I like that Jeremy Corbyn in his conference speech said he would make a brilliant Chancellor. Yeah, but which one? So what's happening with Jeremy then?
Me personally or Jeremy Corbyn?
Yeah.
Had a prostate exam recently.
Has that changed your worldview?
I think I'm getting a bit of arthritis in this hand. What else is happening?
Sorry, listeners at home, Jeremy was holding up his right hand.
If they can't be bothered to come to a free recording in the centre of London, like all these people here who've come in to shelter from the cold, thinking they were going to get hymns and free soup, and found that instead they had a light-hearted and irreverent look at the week's news.
Appalling administrative error, for which we apologise. And Corbyn, before you started telling us about what I assume was the beginning of a long list of personal woes, you were going to say something about Jeremy Corbyn, I believe?
No, you asked me a question.
Sarah asked you a question.
What was the question, Sarah? Sorry.
I'm sure you answered it.
Did I?
Yes.
Well, I hope that's cleared that up.
I'm 54.
How did it go, your prostate exam?
I passed, but thankfully not in that sense. I did mess up the reversing, though, it has to be said.
Does anyone know what happened at a... Does anyone know what happened at a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party this week?
I imagine that they were all hateful because Corbyn, sadly, has only got about 20 people supporting him and the rest of them are all just baying for his blood and waiting for him to fail and doing everything they can to undermine him. Because the trouble is, and when I say this, I mean, we're in a new kind of period of politics without personal abuse. And I say this in the spirit of inclusivity and openness, reaching out to all sections of the Labour Party. There are some real bastards in it. Absolutely horrible people who just want him to fail.
Anne, were you aware of this parliamentary Labour Party?
I was very aware of it. There I was, clutching my notebook hotly in my hand as a stream of MPs from all bits of the party came out saying this is a shambles. And I think that's, you know, the saying to Jeremy did convince quite a lot of people on the left of the party that it hadn't been their best week, what with John McDonnell and a few other things going wrong. So I think he didn't have his best night, and he's now a bit on the back foot. But he's going to come back, you know, because there's always that comeback moment that when you're really down in politics, then anything you do, because we're very suggestible political columnists, and anything you do, if you just kind of walk in a straight line or bless a child or just sing a second verse of something that isn't the national anthem, he will bounce back because everyone will say, it's not that useless after all.
I thought the Marrow was a good moment because you know, he posed with somebody's Marrow, prize-winning Marrow, and it was a huge, tumescent, priapic thing. He looked very authoritative, and he did compare it disparagingly to David Miliband's banana, which I thought was...
He just did like a pose, like, oh, this is a good Marrow, and it was weirdly low-level sexual. Because you know how people do aubergines as their emojis, and that's supposed to be rude? It was like an emoji. Yes, I know. I didn't know either.
God, my inbox is filled with nothing but aubergines. Which is the same in my veg box, Riverford, if you're listening. We're not happy.
I went for Sunday lunch recently in the Cotswolds with some people that I really don't like very much.
Thank God this isn't going out on the radio.
Oh, you know who they listen to this. Well, we went for Sunday lunch and the starter was marrow, and I like marrow. And my mum used to cook stuffed marrow, and I like marrow, and I ordered it. And do you know what it was? It wasn't marrow, it was marrow. They cook and serve you bone marrow? I was disgusted.
Well, what an emotional journey for us all. Incongruously, this is the reaction of that smoking hole in the British political landscape, the Labour Party, to the government's budget surplus plan. Indecisive Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, or is he, changed his mind this week and voted against George Osborne's new fiscal rules. His shock U-turn took the party away from anti-austerity and then away from anti-austerity. The Labour Party is now less U-turn and more panicked marital spat on an unfamiliar roundabout. George Osborne's plan for a budget surplus has been described by some as a trap for Labour. I'm not much of a huntsman myself, but as I understand it, it's not usually necessary to lay a trap for something that is already dead. Earlier in the week, there was a very angry meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party on this issue. Moderate MP Ian Austin stood up and said Jeremy should start acting like the leader of the opposition and not like a student union president, which Corbyn swiftly rebuffed by announcing a 5 pints for a tenner deal at the bar and reminding everyone that the shop only sells fair trade, yeah? Anyway, all this seems like thoroughly sensible behaviour on the part of the Labour Party, and just the sort of thing that, come the next general election, will see Jeremy Corbyn riding victoriously into Downing Street on the back of a publicly owned unicorn. 2 points to Jeremy. Anne, who's under pressure due to the pressure they put on others to put others under pressure?
Yes, this is Mr. Tom Watson, Jeremy Corbyn's able deputy. And we thought that Tom Watson would be the enforcer and would stop the Corbyn chaos. But in fact, of course, because they're just there to prove us wrong all the time in the commentariat, he has gone and unleashed some chaos all of his own. And this was the charge that he brought up in the Commons, where you have privilege to say anything you want about anyone you don't like. And he said, well, there's this widespread paedophile ring linked to number 10. Which actually, on a slow news day, you know, you would sit up and listen to that. Anyway, there are only a couple of things wrong with that there wasn't really a widespread paedophile ring, it wasn't linked to number 10, and that the person that he linked it to, the late Leon Britton, who was already terminally ill at the time, has been exonerated, and police are not following it up. So basically, we then ended up with a situation in which Mr. Watson was asked to apologise, which we thought he might have done. But he said, having compared Leon Britton to as close to evil as a human being can get, he said, citing someone else, but he said it. He then said, it's not for me to judge the validity of these claims. So in the 100 years, I think, this week, since Arthur Miller was born, we've had a bit of Salem down at Westminster. I think it was a ducking stool. And some of us are kind of hoping that Tom might be on it.
Otherwise, are you in favour of Tom Watson?
Actually, no, I've always, when I said he was an enforcer, he's one of those big, fat, jolly chaps. There's none of those on the panel. He's actually... he's a very...
I'm not jolly.
But no, in fairness, I do think Tom Watson is...
Tom Watson?
Tom Watson.
I don't think we should drag him into this.
No, Tom Watson, we thought, was this very efficient, quite hardline, Gordon Brown-trained thug who would come in and biff them all. So to that extent, actually, I was a bit of a Tom Watson fan. But I do think this is a case of, if in a hole, stop digging, or preferably at Westminster, push someone else into the hole.
I think parliamentary privilege, I mean, it is quite tempting. I think it'd be worth becoming an MP so that you could just stand up in the Commons and say, will the right honourable gentleman agree with me that Vinnie Jones wears ladies' pants? And there would be nothing that Vinnie Jones could do about it, unless he caught you in a darkened place.
What I do, if I've got a secret or I know something really good and I don't want to get in trouble for saying it, I tell my mum and then get her drunk, and she tells everyone.
Suboptimally, this is the storm surrounding Deputy Labour leader Tom Watson, who this week refused to apologise for asking the police to investigate former Conservative Minister Leon Britton, saying he was far too busy preparing his lengthy and detailed apologies for Labour's performance in the 2020 general election. Essentially, the victims have had their reputations destroyed, Leon Britton's had his reputation destroyed, and now Tom Watson's had his reputation destroyed. I suppose what I'm suggesting it is, as they say on BBC Breakfast, this is a story with something for everyone. This pressure on Watson has come in the month that Rebecca Brooks is back at News Corps, but that has to be a coincidence. She strikes me as the kind of woman who is happy to let bygones be bygones. Certainly not the sort of person to seek a deadly vendetta, wreaking bloody revenge after bloody revenge until the stage is littered with corpses. We wish her well. 2 points to Anne. Bob, have a listen to this. Bob, who's Aberdeen having a nice time?
I don't know who that was singing. Was that the Proclaimers?
That was Craig and Charlie Reid. Yeah.
Oh, it was Craig and Charlie. It's a nice song. Aberdeen's, it's the SNP conference, the Scottish National Party conference. Nicola Sturgeon addressing them, and it was a wonderful affair. How wouldn't it be? How wouldn't it be if you're a totalitarian state, a one-party state, basically, which is what they are? And she made some wonderful statements. Someone said, what about a referendum? And she said, now, come on, unless the opinion polls tell us that the majority of people are in favour of a referendum, I'm not going to... So, you're not going to have one until YouGov tell you you're going to win, right? And then you pile in and have one. They will have one. They'll have one within 3 years, I think, and win it. But they're also, because they have to act like any other political party, although they have literally no opposition. And so she has to make these speeches, quite genuinely saying, next May, I'm going to go to the people of Scotland and ask them to elect me First Minister for the first time, because I've never been elected. And in order to do this, we must approach them with humility, and we must show them that we... No, what you must do is just open some polling booths. And then you will be the next minister, because there's no one else going to be on the card. Who else is going to be on the card?
I thought I might go up for it.
I think you should. Because you probably come second.
I hope so.
The other great thing was that she's made it clear, as all people do when they become in power, is that I'm not just representing the people who voted for me and the people who agree with me. I want to represent everyone. And the point she was making was that even people who hadn't been in favour of independence during the referendum, she still wanted them to be part of the SNP family. Unfortunately, what was tweeted was that I want no voters to vote SNP.
they've sort of reverted, because for a while I thought, well, maybe they're not this sort of blood and shortbread nationalism that they thought they were. It seemed to be more about them wanting a more left-wing, radical, nuclear-free Scotland, which they couldn't have while hitched to England. I thought, well, you know, if I lived in Scotland, I'd vote for independence, but then if I lived in America, I'd weigh 40 stone and carry an assault rifle, so it's kind of a pointless observation, and I apologise to the listeners for it. But they seem to have reverted, and everyone thought, well, because what's her name? Mari Black's fantastic. She's 20 years old, and some of them are amazing. They all make it. I mean, it was a wonderful speech, inspiring speech about how a hero was Tony Benn. And I thought, they're really young, a lot of these nationalists, and they're all talking about how much they hate Westminster. You think, you don't hate it. You've tipped up there in May. You've found it's absolutely full of subsidised bars. It's been like Freshers' Week for months in there.
Well, hubristically, this is the largest ever Scottish Nationalist Party conference taking place this week in Aberdeen. I've no idea why the SNP chose Aberdeen as their conference venue, unless perhaps Alex Salmon looks more palatable when lit from above by the Aurora Borealis. This is my first opportunity to make jokes at the expense of the Scottish nationalists, but from what I understand from the internet, they take all these things in extremely good heart. Sturgeon pledged to stand up for the forgotten and marginalised in Scottish society, namely the Labour Party. As the conference began, a YouGov poll showed that the SNP have a 30-point lead over Labour in Scotland, so there's no evidence of a Corbyn bounce, which is also the name of a popular dance craze where you jig up and down with the red flag on in the background. And the Corbyn bounce is also the name of an activity once enjoyed by Shadow International Development Secretary Diane Abbott, where you jig up and down with the red flag on in the background. 2 points to Bob. Sarah, who's made a big deal about doing the rights thing?
We were going to earn 5.6 million, just under £6 million training prison officers in Saudi Arabia, and now we're not going to do that anymore. And also, because I looked into this, because I thought we were sending our prison officers over there for training, and I thought that is a scary works conference. And they'd be watching those videos, like, oh, make sure that you bend at the knee, not at the waist when you're picking up the soap. And but no, it's not that. We were going to be training them, but now we've decided not to, which is a lot like a U-turn. Obviously, but it's the right decision. And also another great example of listening to people's opinions. Saudi Arabia behead people and they stone people and they have crucifixion, and our prison officers don't have they don't know. How are they going to teach people skills that they don't have?
And hence our prisons are fuller.
It was a sideline set up by Chris Grayling, wasn't it? Was it Justice Services International?
Yeah.
Which sounds like Thunderbirds, doesn't it? But then it got embarrassing because Jeremy Corbyn pointed out that a 17-year-old lad who protested against the regime was about to be crucified, and Cameron quickly thought, oh, God, let's hope that Prince Andrew didn't go on a sales jolly with some nail exporters. And then it wasn't just Saudis being tortured. A British man who'd made illicit hooch was going to be flogged. And they thought, well, let's just check and see if there's some lucrative whip deal about to go through. And there wasn't. But it is a U-turn that exposes division in the cabinet.
So the thing with Mr. Andre, the British man, is
Peter?
that... No, it's not. Peter Andre is safe and well and on Strictly Come Dancing.
Okay.
I hope that's your question. Yes. Mr. Andre, so he's been in... I mean, it's a horrible story. He's a 74-year-old man, and he made homemade wine in Saudi Arabia, and he's been in prison for a year, and then they were saying he was going to get lashes.
35.
35 lashes? No, it's 360, I heard.
Where the confusion has arisen, I think, like a lot of old men, he's brewed his own wine and he's gone out on the lash. OK? But what happens here, somebody went to another country where they have really, really tight rules about alcohol. I know it's wrong because there are places where you can drink in Saudi Arabia and there are places all over. But the rules on brewing alcohol are like the rules on setting fire to badgers in this country. And he brewed his own alcohol and he went to prison for a year.
Which is the place if you want home-brewed alcohol, prisons, really.
Yes, well, exactly. But what they've done then, the thing with the crucifixion, we had this deal. We didn't have the deal. We tendered for the deal. Because Saudi Arabia want people to train their prison officers, not just their officers, but their staff, and we tended to it on the grounds maybe that you're better off being inside an environment and trying to improve it than you are standing on the outside of it and just moaning about it, because I think it would have been a perfectly good thing. Because I think if you're in the prison in Saudi Arabia, if you're faced with the two options, one is Allah will smite you down and I will crucify you and chop your head. Between that and, oh, now, Fletcher, why don't you just stop doing that because it's rather naughty? I think you prefer our system, even if Mr Mackay occasionally turns up and is not.
But then maybe we could learn from them, because they've obviously, their defence of what we would consider a breach of human rights is that it's Sharia law. Maybe we should, as a vaguely Christian country, start doing biblical punishments on people, like pestilences and turning people to salt. And anyone who eats fruit is kicked out by their landlord.
Plague the frogs.
And no more ASBOs, just flooding in houses. Only the pets escape.
There's something very British about this story, though, isn't there? The Prime Minister gets involved, there's a cabinet rift, big bust-up between Michael Gove and Philip Hammond, this sort of saturnine, power-suited foreign secretary. And it's actually only tipped that way because someone was making homemade booze. Like, forget all the rest, you know, the other human rights stuff, you know, so what. But it's basically when an elderly British male has had his homebrew interfered with. You know, up with this, the British government will not put.
That's our NRA. It's like, do you know what? We've not written it down, but like British people are allowed to drink. Try and stop them.
It's part of our culture, which should be respected, I think.
Yeah.
But
Does this make Gove one of the good guys at the moment?
Yeah, and I think that is just concerting an awful lot of people who've spent years honing their hatred of Michael Gove over his education reforms and are now finding he's on the right side of their argument as penal liberals, as it happens. But there is now this danger, I suppose, if the Saudi thing had gone through, that Michael Gove would have been visiting all these Saudi prisons. So that, you know, some may say they had a lucky escape on that one.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a U-turn on this, but we still have a lot of deals with Saudi Arabia. Does anyone know what deals we still have in place?
we're supplying them with illegally brewed alcohol for them to pour into the Gulf and Tatat. The problem for us is, of course, we rely on the Saudis to give us intelligence about some of the terrorist organisations that they finance.
Intriguingly, this is the kerfuffle, that's what it is, let's not pretend otherwise, over the government pulling out of a £5.9 million deal to provide services to the prison system in Saudi Arabia, because there are some depths of depravity to which even Michael Gove will not sink. Justice Secretary Gove and Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond have supposedly had a furious row over whether the deal should have gone ahead. Hammond and Gove clashed in an exchange of letters, adding further fuel to the rumour that Michael Gove is in fact a Jane Austen character. Apparently, the Saudi deal was conducted through the commercial arm of the British justice system, which is the kind of phrase you might want to repeat to yourself if ever you start imagining that you're not living in some kind of appalling Orwellian nightmare. Despite cancelling the £6 million deal, more controversial and lucrative deals between Britain and Saudi are still going ahead, with them rumoured to be paying well over the odds to show the next series of Call the Mid-Husband, Mr Brown's Boys and the Imam of Dibley. 2 points to Sarah. And at the end of round one, the scores are Jeremy and Anne have 4, but Sarah and Bob have 7. No wonder you're treating yourself to a drink, Sarah.
The people at home don't know I've had a drink.
Oh, they do. We start round 2 with a cutting from Farmers Weekly.
Up to 50,000 horses disappeared across Europe and probably ended up in our food during the horse meat scandal, a leading food safety expert has claimed. Professor Chris Elliott made the astonishing revelation at the Fighting Food Fraud Conference held at Doncaster Racecourse.
Thanks to Edward Young for sending us that. Jeremy, have a listen to this.
I think that's the ident for regional news in the northwest of Wales.
No, it's actually the national anthem of Ecuador.
OK. Oh, I know what this is.
So, Jeremy, there was a question. And then
No, I can guess.
Can I steal? Because I think I know it as well. Does that ever happen?
No.
No.
No, that would be... OK.
Was that really the national anthem of Ecuador?
No. Jeremy, who will no longer be met by the Met?
Julian Assange lives in the Ecuadorian embassy, which is very central, handy for the shops. However, he doesn't get out much. The reason being that he has questions to answer in Sweden. It's all a rum-do because there are very grim accusations against him. However, the Swedes did say, off you go back to England, it's fine. Then he got back here. Then they said, we need you back there. But then he was worried that he would be extradited to America because of his leaks, which can happen to any man. It's nothing to be embarrassed about, although it's generally... The Americans will put him away forever and ever and ever because he endangered the lives of agents in the field, if you believe spy movies, which aren't actually real. And he moved into this Ecuadorian embassy because they said, well, you can come and stay. It's all right. It's fine. We've got some bedding in the airing cupboard. We have to be up early, but there's some Cocoa Pops above the microwave. Help yourself. And so he lives there, and he's lived there for a very long time. But it's cost millions because loads and loads of police basically just stand there. And it's costing so much. They said they're going to scrap that and they're going to watch him covertly, which I think will be great, because then one of them will be like pretending to clean windows over the street, one will be selling ice creams on the corner, and then one will have one of those road menders' tents and be peering out with binoculars, spying on them. Yeah, I don't know, it's some insane amount of money that the police charge for doing
it's 12 million pounds.
But then I don't understand why people say, oh, it cost the police this amount of money. You think, well, what does it cost them anything? They're at work anyway. So...
Exactly. The thing is, the ones who stood outside, there just must have been the most horrible shift to pull. If the Sarge just hated your guts, right, you got to watch that door. And if a strange-looking man with slightly albino hair comes out, yeah, he's not coming out. Yeah, but if he does. Yeah, but he's not going to. Yeah, but if he does. And don't think you can just have a kip and read a book in the back, because every now and again we'll sneak a blonde person past just to see if you're paying attention.
He might not still be there. He might have snuck out ages ago.
That's my suspicion, is that he's not even there anymore. And this isn't based on anything but a woman's hunch.
It sounds
I think
very
he's
reasonable.
nearby.
I thought you'd had surgery for that hunch.
Anne, do you think there have been any deals done behind the scenes?
Well, there's clearly some deals done because he ordered Domino's pizza to celebrate when the police went away. I know. It wasn't very classy, was it?
No.
It wouldn't have been my choice.
What would you have had?
What will you have when you're finally released?
Oh, when I'm finally released, I would have something with kind of fine oils and chili peppers and, you know, those sort of ones with those weird things that you don't really like, but you have them on a pizza, like
So
anchovies.
it'd still be a pizza?
Imagine if this is the week that he finally finished the tunnel. I can do what? Just out the front door, mate. Vaingloriously, these are the latest developments in the case of Julian Assange, or as fans of Benedict Cumberbatch know him, Evil Sherlock. Police will no longer keep a 24-hour watch on the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where Cumbersange has been since June 2012. But they will still try to arrest him using covert and overt tactics. Perhaps a fire drill might work, or maybe try tempting him out of the embassy by leaving a trail of memory sticks. Sadly, I have to make jokes at his expense due to my role as a lackey of the capitalist media who uses laughter to distract the public from the machinations of globalised corporate power. Still, nice to be working. Scotland Yard said that resources are finite and there were so many different criminal and other threats to the city, which suggests that they are at least aware of Boris Johnson. Japanese schoolchildren very much the red rag to his proverbial bull. The 24-hour guard has been stepped down and will be replaced by a much cheaper option, namely a retired police horse with a machine gun. 2 points to Jeremy. Anne, who likes not paying too much tax?
Well, quite a lot of people like not paying too much tax, but Facebook have perfected the art by paying a magisterial £4,327 in UK corporation tax, which is equivalent to what a single person who earned £26,000 a year would be, including national insurance. Sorry, The Economist. But the point being that Facebook actually makes an awful lot of money, and this is quite a profitable territory for them. And so, weirdly, they didn't seem to pay any money at all, or barely any money at all. And I turned to our august pages to find out how this works, which is, well, phew, someone else can tell me, and they're on the finance section, and I found this, and now I'm a world expert. So what you basically do is you start off with your payments going through an Irish registered subsidiary, So anyway, something that's registered in Ireland, then a Dutch one. I don't work on the finance section. Then a Dutch one, and then another Irish thing that's domiciled for tax purposes in somewhere like, I hope you're keeping up with this, it's somewhere like Bermuda. And it's called the double Irish with a Dutch sandwich.
And now everyone at home knows how to do it.
So if you ever go and order that, you basically get a Facebook tax deduction, and you basically just don't declare tax. You keep moving it into places where they have less tax. So in fact, you never, ever need make a profit. It's a bit like working for the BBC, actually, at the end of the year. But in this case, you really don't pay much tax at all. And some people thought that perhaps Mr. and Mrs. Facebook might like to pony up a bit more.
It's so bad, because actually on paper they made a loss in this country. So that's the amazing thing with the maths. Like, everyone had these huge bonuses, which are more, and then they make a loss in this country. I'm not paying for Farmville anymore in protest. Like, I've stopped.
Where do they say all their money's gone? Presumably they don't say they're doing that.
Well, they say it just basically you declare an accounting loss everywhere along the way, and you go to places where your tax is less and less and less until in the end, like a sort of Lewis Carroll scene, there's sort of none of it left, really, apart from £4,000, which you go, OK, well, you might as well have that, give that to the Exchequer. But you just basically never make sure that your profit is always funding something else, so you can offset it in opening a factory somewhere in Asia. So you need never really say that you made any money at all.
Brilliant. So, like 24 million people, UK citizens, go on... That's 24 million people go on it every day, and more go on it every so often. Now, I figure, that shows that they're clearly making a load of money, but maybe a good way of raising tax revenue from that is to say everyone that goes on Facebook, 24 million people, has to pay £1 a day, which would yield getting on for about £9 billion a year, and that could be used to rehabilitate people with narcissistic personality disorder who use Facebook in order to self-aggrandise and live vicariously through their children's achievements.
Extortionately, this is the corporation tax scandal involving Facebook, which, as far as I can understand it, is a sort of virtual Rotary Club with an extremely lax membership policy. Last year, Facebook only paid £4,327 in corporation tax, less than the average earner pays in income tax and national insurance. But to be fair, the average earner doesn't provide each and every one of us with a social media platform enabling us to share our deep love of selfies taken on totally legendary nights out with a billion other unique, complicated and utterly fascinating individuals. About half of the UK population have a Facebook account. I, for one, am not surprised, representing Britain perfectly as it does, with its winning mix of time-wasting and thinly veiled racism. George Osborne lowered the rate of corporation tax from 28% to 21%, another Tory financial policy which is unpopular with everyone who doesn't work in finance or lives somewhere that's recently won Britain in bloom. The government have long argued that we're in danger of driving away multinationals if we tax them excessively. And who could imagine walking down a British high street without the warm and inviting glow of a top shop? Part of the reason Facebook pays so little corporation tax is down to how much they pay their staff. At Facebook, the average salary is £210,000 a year. That is a staggering salary. Just to put it in BBC terms, we're talking nearly 2/3 of a yentob. 2 points to Anne. Sarah, who's revealed some kind of cover-up?
This is my favourite story of the week. This is that Playboy, the soft pornographers, because of the way pornography is now so freely available on the internet, as a business move, they are covering the women up. So there'll be very sexy, very beautiful women in Playboy, but they will be wearing bikinis and underpants. So, because I guess so much now is sharing online, and people don't tend to want their work colleagues to know they just read a great article in Playboy. So it's not like it's not a feminist thing. It's a business thing. So this is capitalism, isn't it? Isn't it, guys?
This is how it works. The one thing, I haven't seen a copy of it. I didn't know they still made Playboy, but thank you for ruining any enjoyment I might have had by introducing the word underpants.
Oh.
what's amazing is that they've said, we've decided that there is so much pornography freely available now that it's become rather blasé. And I thought, it's 2015, have you only just realised there's a lot of pornography on the internet?
Nudity's got hack.
Yeah.
Anyone here who came through Oxford Circus Station, which would be a lot of...
With the models on... Oh!
I mean, this is the problem it's like, it's bombardment, it's bullying, like, it's everywhere.
Do you know what she's talking about? Did you come to Oxford Circus?
I counted it. I saw 106 women in their pants.
There's actually 108.
Okay.
It's easy to miss the two round the corner because you need to look back. But no, it's not 108. It's the same woman.
Yeah.
In two poses.
Yeah.
Look at me with the bra on. Now look at me with the bra off.
Does she work for London Transport, this woman?
Has this changed the photo policy at The Economist at all?
Well, yeah, obviously, we're thinking about it, you know, this brand departure that Playboy has made and what that could mean for us, because if you actually read, they're very serious corporate announcement about this, and they said, actually, what's much more important is the quality of the articles. And people used to say that they used to put Playboy inside The Economist, but we're worried now it might be the other way around, you know. There'll be Playboy on the outside, which will have lots of charts and graphs and explanations of the deficit. And, of course, you know, we'll be light relief, so to speak. So...
And if it does work with Playboy, that the women are wearing underwear and there's more about the articles and the women are kind of less important to it, maybe that will also happen on page 3, where that the news in brief section gets longer and longer and the woman gets kind of smaller and more in the corner until it's just a tit in the corner, like Richard Littlejohn's.
Detumescently, this is the news that Playboy will no longer carry pictures of naked women. But as one door closes, another one opens. And in a surprise move, Total Carp has announced a radical shake-up in its editorial policy. Look out next month for a particularly saucy top-down of Jeff Evans, 56, the ever-popular coarse angler who hails from Grantham in Lincolnshire. Playboy says it has fallen victim to the success of free online content and the success of more niche magazines, such as Hot Girls, a magazine featuring women wearing as many layers as physically possible. Next month's cover girl is Carmen Electra in a cardigan and a parka. Magazine executives admitted that Playboy had been a victim of its own pioneering success. Chief Executive Scott Flanders was quoted as saying, "That battle has been fought and won. Ah, yes, that valiant struggle. Remember all those who marched and died for the right to smut." The internet means pornographic magazines are no longer viable. I just worry that once those skills are gone, they'll be lost forever. Like coopering. Playboy will still feature women in provocative poses, including such classics as putting their feet on train seats, parking across two spaces, and proffering an unsolicited opinion in Saudi Arabia. 2 points to Sarah. Bob, who didn't like the look of the writing on the wall?
Homeland. I've never seen Homeland. It's an American drama. I don't watch American television. There's an American drama called Homeland, and they have, part of it is they have camps. Refugee camps, I suppose. And the people producing it said, you know what, we've seen some pictures of camps and they've got lots of graffiti. I suppose it's anti-Assad graffiti, and can we get some done? And they brought in 3 Arabic graffiti artists, and they said, you just do sort of graffiti, Arabic graffiti, just to make it look good. And they said, oh, of course, sir, yes, we'll do that for you. That'll be our pleasure. So now, if you're watching Homeland, but you happen to have a passing knowledge of Arabic, you watch the action and think, why does it say on the wall, Homeland is racist? This is not a cereal, this is a watermelon. And my favourite, don't worry, they're only actors. And I just thought, that is genius.
That's what is... I've never seen Homeland, but everyone says they get everything wrong. People are using the wrong language. They just lumped people together as kind of generically sort of that part of the world, a bit brown. But since Hurt Locker, things have improved, and Homeland has actually now reached the standard of Carry On, Follow That Camel.
Subliminally, this is the news that a group of street artists employed to paint graffiti on the set of the TV show Homeland chose to spray messages in Arabic that, when translated, read "Homeland is racist." Hidden messages are nothing new. If you watch Downton Abbey, you may spot a series of subtle messages designed to rigidly reinforce the existing English class system. The makers of Homeland were disappointed to be accused of using Arabic stereotypes and said that they were keen to draw a veil over the whole thing. Before being told that was even more offensive. This sort of thing is all too common. The other day I was watching Songs of Praise and a message flashed up on the screen urging the audience to build Jerusalem in the English countryside. If that isn't an attempt to radicalise, I don't know what is. 2 points to Bob. Before we reveal the final scores, has anybody got a cutting they'd like to share? Anne.
Well, practically everyone who read it sent this in from the Daily Mail this week. London Zoo meerkat handler found guilty of glassing her monkey expert love rival colleague in the face in a row over her hunky llama keeper lover. And we've all been there, haven't we?
Sarah.
This is my one. Keith Ravenscroft says, "We were recently searching for a hotel in York on Booking.com. One blog about one hotel said as follows: Everything about the hotel was great, except in the morning, I was unable to get access to the wife."
One way to log on.
Bob.
This was many people sent this. It's from an unknown publication, but it's obviously a university magazine. It's sent in by lots of people. A group of disorderly students playing a raucous game of hide and seek in the Harris Fine Arts Centre at 11 p.m. caused a faculty member to call the university police. The police arrived, but were not able to find any of the students.
Thank you, and now let's take a look at the final score. Jeremy and Anne have 10, but this week's winners are Sarah and Bob with 11. Before we leave you, here is a cutting from the BBC website sent in by Gary McDowell.
Golfer Sang Moon Bae needed to win the 18th hole, but conceded the game following a poor chip and a missed putt. The 29-year-old will now begin 2 years of compulsory military service in South Korea.
And with that, goodbye.
Taking part in the news quiz were Jeremy Hardy, Anne McElvoy, Sara Pascoe and Bob Mills. In the chair was Miles Jupp, and the news was read by me, Diana Speed. The chair script was written by James Kettle, Simon Littlefield and Benjamin Partridge, with additional material by Sarah Campbell and Stephen Holford. The producer was Richard Morris, and it was a BBC Radio comedy production.